Hello, namaste. Welcome to Dev's Hammer Show. This is the weekly flagship English talk show of Indigenous TV and ITV. In this weekly television talk show, I invite guests from different countries or different walk of life to discuss about the contemporary issues affecting Indigenous peoples. And in this weekly talk show, sometimes I conduct a face-to-face interview, sometimes I conduct online video conferences. And today, in order to discuss about a new topic, especially on the Nepal's one of the language which is in the verge of extinct, right? Which is a Kusunda language. So in order to promote or preserve the Kusunda language, which is in the verge of extinction, some colleagues from Germany and a colleague from India, we have met in Kathmandu, and they are promoting this Kusunda language. So I have invited them to discuss about their work, how actually they are promoting or preserving Kusunda language. So let me welcome them. We have Felix from Germany, and I also have invited a colleague from India, Gayatri. So I just, before delving into our conversation, I would like to request you to introduce shortly. Please, Felix.
Yeah, so my name is Felix Gaedtke. I'm co-founder at an immersive storytelling studio in Berlin called Now Here Media, together with Gayatri, and I have been involved as a director and producer for the virtual reality experience Kusunda, which we co-created together with the Kusunda community in Nepal.
All right. So thank you, Felix. Gayatri.
Thank you very much for having me here, Dev. My name is Gayatri Parameswaran. I am the other co-founder, co-director and producer for Kusunda, which is a virtual reality experience about the indigenous language, Kusunda, in Nepal, which has been created together with the Kusunda community. And it's what we did differently. What we can say about this documentary is that we used a new media technology, virtual reality. So people are required to wear a VR headset, and it's an interactive experience. So in the experience, you have to speak certain Kusunda words in order to move further in the narrative. So by using your voice, you are standing in solidarity with the community that's trying to keep the language alive.
So the statistics puts that around the world about 7,000 the languages which are spoken, and almost 90% or 90 to 95% of these languages which are spoken by indigenous peoples, right, around the world, and almost 40% of them, right, around 4,000 plus indigenous languages which are in the verge of extinction. So one is obviously a Kusunda language, right, in Nepal. How this idea of this particular the Kusunda language which is in Nepal, right, you actually chose to revive or help to preserve. How this idea came actually? Who want to start?
Okay, so actually it was 2012, 10 years ago, 1 decade ago, that the seeds of this idea were planted. Felix and I were working as journalists in Nepal, in Kathmandu. We were based here as foreign correspondents. And through a chance encounter, we met a linguist called Professor Madhav Pokharel, who was doing some research on the Kusunda language. And Madhavji actually told us that, there's only one speaker left of the Kusunda language, and you should go and meet her. And that's Gyanimea Kusundaji. So we said, okay, let's make the journey and go and meet. So we did like a 14-hour bus ride to Dang, and then at that time there was no bridge, so we had to walk across a river and go and meet Gyanimea-ji. And we were, completely floored by her charisma, her presence, and she was such a charming individual and personality. And it was she who inspired us to do this project, actually. At that time, 10 years ago, we created a radio piece and a video feature as journalists. But we stayed in touch also via the researcher and linguist Uday Rajale. And then over the years, she started teaching the language to children in the village. And also she started working on research projects with researchers. And we had started experimenting with new media technologies. So at one point there was an opportunity to create a project proposal. So together with Ganimaya ji, we said, okay, can we, do something with virtual reality? And she was excited about it, and she said, yes, let's do it. And that's how this project actually started.
So now we are discussing in 2022, and this time, and the sad is that we lost Ganimaya Kusunda, I guess, a couple of years in, I think, 2019. So Ganimaya Kusunda is no more, and I guess the Kamala Kusunda, who is a sister of Ganimaya Kusunda, who is not that much perfect, but she is also fluent in Kusunda language. And before doing this interview, actually, I had an opportunity to watch the documentary that you produced into a 3D. That was really interesting. And the idea of this, virtual connection or reality, connecting with this, dying language, reviving with this virtual, how actually you elaborated how that idea came with, and how that idea of connecting this newer technology actually emerged. Could you just share your production's experience earlier, that you had similar project earlier and now?
Yes, we had several VR projects that we worked on before, and I think one thing VR is really good at is transporting people to a place and to a completely different environment, and really giving a sense of presence, of being somewhere else. And for us, language is also something that's connected to a place very often. So that's kind of the starting point in that sense, where we wanted to make clear that if a language is much more than just words, it's really connected to a place, to a way of looking at the world, and to incorporate that place into the documentary, into the story, was really important. I think that's where virtual reality or these immersive technologies were really helpful for us.
Yeah, and it's actually quite sad. What happened is that we were going to leave to Nepal, to Kathmandu from Berlin in 2020. In January 2020, we were just about to start the production of the virtual reality documentary with Ganimaya Kusunda. And literally 2 days before we were flying, Ganimaya passed away. So it was a big loss for the entire community, for everyone who looked up to her, and also for us and the project. And we were completely lost as to how are we going to do this piece, But we still took the plane and we came and we met her family. And they insisted that we should continue with the project because Ganimaya had been excited about the piece. So with their blessings and their encouragement, we moved forward, and we met other people from the community, and the piece turned out to be very different from what we had planned with Ganimaya Kusunda. But in some ways, it has more levels, and it has more depth than it would have had we stuck to the initial plan.
Yes, exactly as you said, in 2020, January, that you were planning. And in February, I guess, in 2020, February, I also still can recall that UNESCO actually had organized formal closing of 2019, the International Year of Indigenous Languages, and adoption of action plan for this decade, International Decade for Indigenous Languages. That was in 2020 in February, organized in Mexico, presidential building. I had an opportunity to speak on behalf of how the media actually can help in revitalizing indigenous languages. That time I also spoke about same issue, that the dire situation of how challenging for indigenous people's language to revive, right? So this is obviously, as you say, this is really sad, and as you have been working for last 14 years or so, as you said, at least for a decade, following with this certain Kusunda language, remaining with a fewer number, on and off you are in interaction with community as well as activists. What is your observations as you took a name of Madhav Pokhrel? He is the professor of linguist from Department of Language. He actually could influence to the policymakers in making of language as well. And did you find, or what is your observation, to what extent the government of Nepal promoting or helping in preserving of such dying language in Nepal? What is your observation from outside, right, for last 1 decade? And did you find any impressive steps that government has taken? What is your just experience, right, working with you have been advocating with? And
I think there have been some steps. There are some language revitalization programs that have been running, in at least in the Kusunda community. There can definitely be more. I think what's important is that this language is connected to a lot of other things. And indigenous people, indigenous youth, for instance, they need support in many different walks of life. Not just language revitalization, but it would be helpful to have scholarships for students to continue education. If they continue education, perhaps they have some more time to dedicate to language, learning the language. If they have opportunities to learn other skills, not only languages, but perhaps some kind of training that can help them get employment later on, expand their network, I think it would be really good to create these opportunities. So I would like to stress that the government can do, and has been doing, but it can do more in terms of diversifying the kind of opportunities that it creates for indigenous people. Sometimes the issue is housing, sometimes the issue is other economic matters, and sometimes it's culture. And all of these are connected. If they don't have housing, if there is no education, nobody is going to think about the language and the culture. So I think there has to be a balanced approach that has to come from different directions.
Yeah, and I also think beyond the government, it's also like the society as a whole that is taking up these things. That's why I think a program like yours is so important, to have something that comes from within the indigenous communities and where they help each other out.
And I want to know, yes, obviously we, like indigenous television has been a platform promoting the indigenous languages in Nepal, and we actually had a plan, and still we have a plan to teach, dying languages that maybe a Kusunda, maybe during this decade, teaching this language through a television or archiving somewhere. And I want to know your experience that, as you said, you were involved in producing this, virtual, the reality documentary of kind, and you actually screened in other places as well, showing this Kusunda's cases in other part. What is your, what are the reaction that, whoever watched this documentary, and, what are actually their reaction, and how do you think this can actually promote preserving in this Kusunda language? What is your, experience in it?
Yeah, so we were very lucky to be able to screen Kusunda in many different places. So we screened it in the US, in many places in Europe, and in Asia, and so on. And the reactions were very positive. And one thing that happened almost anywhere we went was that we showed this documentary, and people were saying, I also speak such a language, or my grandmother speaks a language, or I know someone who speaks a language that's also slowly losing importance. And so it is a topic that connects people globally. And I think for us, the Kusunda language is really important. It's a very special language. But it also stands as an example, as you said earlier, for so many other languages in the world, and what's being lost if we if we don't work in order to preserve them. And I think that's something that resonated across the board when we showed Kusunda and were able to screen Kusunda.
And it's also a way of life. a way of looking at the world that is lost when a language is lost. So I think with using this kind of 3D and immersive technologies, you have a different way of preserving the past, of archiving. When we showed it to Hima and other members of the Kusunda community and in Nepal last year, one consistent feedback that we got was it felt like you were there. So that's a really striking characteristic of virtual reality, is that people feel like they are not in their real surroundings, but they are in, totally immersed in their virtual surroundings. And it's a time travel because of the stories that Lil Bahadur ji, the shaman in the experience, shares. The kind of life that he lived in the forest, it's not a lifestyle anymore, and it will be lost. Which is okay, but this is a way to kind of have it somehow documented. And it's a very special way of documenting because you are part of that environment. And that's what makes the technology play such a key role in the way that the story is told.
At the time that we are discussing about this newer technology in reviving or preserving or documenting indigenous languages, as this year, I mean not the year, but this decade, International Decade of Indigenous Languages, and we are trying to see different technologies and how best to preserve the indigenous languages and all. And as your production is production house is promoting or using this 3D, how expensive is it, or whether any foundations or even an NGO, small NGOs can produce or adapt this technology and promote their languages. Just could you share how a small community can have access of this kind of technology and promote their own language?
Yeah, I think the kind of work that we did with Kusunda, that is quite expensive, but simpler virtual reality techniques can be applied, like 360 filming. So right now you can buy 360 cameras that film in all directions and can be ported onto a headset and can be viewed. The workflow is quite similar to the workflow of filmmaking. So you use the camera in a way that you would use any camera. So if you come from a filmmaking background or a television background, it becomes easy to use this technology. The post-production is also streamlined in a software that you're familiar with, like Adobe Premiere or something of, something similar. The only thing you need to change, and what needs a little bit of training, is the way you think about the story. So it's not a frame, because a camera is so much based on what's here, but in virtual reality, the whole scene is your frame. You still have to direct the user to look in a certain direction, the person in the headset, and that is what you're kind of playing magic. So you are telling them where to look. You're getting their attention to look where you want them to look. So that is the trick that you need to learn. But yes, actually we have run, and we are currently working on programs where we are running workshops in communities that can teach 360 filming so that they can document their own stories. It's very much possible, and with the help of some foundations or funding, it's coming to life in a lot of different places around the world. And virtual reality is just one technology. I think whatever is available can be used for documentation. For instance, in the last year, we have been able to, together with an indigenous organization called Niatero in the US, we ran a language revitalization program in the Kusunda community, but also a media training program. This helped them to learn how to make films with their mobile phones, how to use Google Drive, how to use YouTube, how to use their email, how to record audio, like all these small things. So you start at one level, depending on what people can use, and then slowly build on it.
So besides Kusunda language, have you also worked, do you have an experience of working, other dying languages from different part? Felix?
We were also involved as part of the Kusunda project in a larger project called Speak to Awaken, where we partnered up with other creators working on other indigenous languages. So there we were not as closely involved as with Kusunda, but for example, there was an experience we were connected to in Taiwan with the Syrian community in Taiwan that were doing also a virtual reality piece about their language and how they actually successfully revitalized their language. So there are many more speakers now. So that was also very interesting to be able to contrast that, and we hope to continue this series and be able to also have more languages as part of Speak to Awake.
I really liked your ideas of working with one case or one language, but for longer run with producing different content or different not only this documentary, maybe other part, or promoting that. We cannot take up many cases at once because we reach nowhere. So taking one issue or one language, but for many years, putting investments and promoting, I think that is a good part. What is your next plan for this Kusunda? The why we are connected with Kusunda is this is a spatial language for Nepal as well, right? And this is as the Kusunda language is going to be a kind of case language, case study for around the world as well. When Nepal government speaks during this decade, the government will be questioned about this language and what it is doing. So what is your plan for the next? During this decade, do you have a spatial plan to promote? Obviously you have a product and you will screen besides this.
I think we want to, exactly what you said, we want to use Kusunda as a case study and help the film travel to many different indigenous communities around the world. Our idea is that we can send the headsets in a backpack and the backpack can travel in different remote places. We are already doing that in Nepal. There are actually a lot of people with headsets who are showing the film in their villages. We want to do that at a global scale, around the world, so that this story can inspire action in many different parts of the world.
And I think on another level, we also want to show the piece to policymakers, because I think VR can be really effective in promoting certain topics to target policymakers and decision makers directly. So I think on the one hand, of course, it's the community, and that's the most important part, but it's really also to see how we can drive change among policies makers.
So you told me that when you traveled in 2020, you also reached out to Indigenous Nationality Commission as well, and you screened about this earlier, not in 20, but
in 2021, right? Yes.
In 2021, but previously, right? Yes. You made and you screened, and you tried to meet other, perhaps the Language Commission people as well, and perhaps you briefed, or even if you don't brief and they are aware about this language and dying language and what their feedback is all about, not about this documentary is really good part, and what is their commitment actually. I want to listen.
Yeah.
And did they make any commitment to promote not this documentary but that language?
Yeah, there is verbal commitment that we got from, I think we met the Deputy Language Commissioner of Nepal, and he also really was impressed by the documentary and liked it quite a lot. And we asked, okay, so what can concrete reach the community? And he said that he will definitely look into scholarships for Hima to continue studying and to continue singing, because singing is her passion, and I'm aware that there are a couple of Kusunda people who are, for instance, in Voices of Nepal, Voice of Nepal, or places like that at the national level. And I think there needs to be more representation of this sort, and the government has to really make it possible and encourage them in all ways possible, support them to achieve these dreams and goals.
You really brought the issue that one of the sister, daughter of Dhanabhadur Kusunda, I guess the chairperson of Kusunda Association, was representing in the Voice of Nepal. That was really a good moment for many people who are working in the inclusion of, or let's say participation of indigenous peoples. right? So obviously, as you already shared previously, that not besides this, documentary making, you also worked with, the Kusunda language teaching as well. What other activities that you are helping in promoting of this language in the ground, in Kusunda language in particular?
So I think it's a program that Gayatri mentioned already, where it's about like really empowering people to create their own videos and language curriculums.
That is training to particular group of Kusunda
Kusunda
youth
and
as well
non-Kusunda.
Okay.
So there are the last program that was run had 8 participants. And Kamala Kusunda was the native speaker together with Uday Rajale. There was the curriculum that was created, and basically these 8 participants got a beginner's course in Kusunda, and we are building on this curriculum. So there is an audiobook that was created as part of the curriculum. They were given phones that had the PDF of the book and the audio guide. So they have to take the phone to their village and also find other people who can listen to the audio guide, because a lot of people cannot read the text. And then they became ambassadors in some way to show not only the documentary but also to promote the language in their villages. So these were, I think 6 of them were people who were Kusunda and 2 were non-Kusunda participants who participated in this program. And our goal is to continue to do this kind of outreach and see how this can be sustainable within the community as well.
The work that obviously the teaching this, not only Kusunda but any other indigenous languages, that teaching or learning that words, particular words, obviously doesn't make a person a perfect or fluent in it, but it will be helpful in archiving certain words. And documentary, obviously this visual as well as audio medium is really a good platform or technology to archive with. And at last, I want to listen from you any words that you want to share for the, taking this Kusunda as an example for promoting of, other, just like this, dying indigenous languages. What lesson the community can take up, and what technology, best technology can they use to promote their dying languages at last?
I think the best technology that can be used is the technology you have. So I guess you can start with whatever you have. If you have a mobile phone with with a microphone, start with that. If you have a camera, start documenting your language. If you have access to the internet, then upload what you document onto the internet, and be creative while doing that and have fun while doing that. I think that is what we learned from the Kusunda community. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's a lot. I think this part of having fun doing that is really important, because when we first met Gyanimea 10 years ago, there was, at least I felt that there was still a bit of stigma that she encountered by speaking this language, and she didn't want to be like fully open about towards the rest of the broader society that she's speaking that language. And I think to overcome that by saying, hey, it's something fun, it's something cool, you can do it, and you can be proud of these languages and speak them. I think that's very important.
Thank you, Felix and Gayatri. If I'm not mistaken, that we can also screen the documentary that you produced in Kusunda language from Indigenous television, right?
Yes.
That you promised that, so that the viewers, you will be able to watch the documentaries that they have produced in Indigenous television. At last, do you have anything to add on that I haven't asked you, but you want to share? Same about your program or project that you are working with, or any language? Anything at last?
Thank you very much for having us, and thanks for all the great work that you are doing here in Nepal. I think it's very, very impressive, and congratulations, and keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So thank you, Felix and Gayatri, for your statement, thought actually you shared, and the time actually you spent visiting Indigenous television and sharing the great work that you are doing for promoting of Kusunna language, and we look forward to promote together the Kusunna language in Nepal together with our television as well, right? So we have come to the end of the show. If you have any queries or feedbacks regarding this Dev's Hammer Show weekly television program, you can reach me at indigenous television@gmail.com. Next week I will come up with new guests to discuss on a newer topic. By then, have a nice weekend. Namaste.